For those of you that don't know, my name is Rob Forsyth, and I'm one of the founding directors at 90,000 Hours. Just very briefly, I'm not going to talk about recruitment, but that's what we do as a business, is we recruit for SaaS and technology businesses, Gemma and I, and I've got about 16 years of experience recruiting for sales and commercial positions for technology businesses. And Gemma joined a number of years ago and is very much focused on customer success. So that's what we do as an organization. And obviously this has been an eventful year, to say the least, but we're obviously speaking to a number of SaaS businesses, large and small, all the time. And we've not really been talking about recruitment a huge amount this year, but we've been really just trying to add value to our clients. And that's kind of what today's about, really. We've known Ian and Matt from Success Methods, who I will introduce or get them to introduce themselves formally in a moment. But we've worked with them for a while now, and we really like their value-based approach to putting the customer at the heart of the conversation. And I really, if you are as an individual thinking about any customer success training, or as an organization thinking about upskilling your teams, you should definitely get in touch with Ian or Matt afterwards. But just while we wait for another minute or two, just for anyone else to join us, I'm going to pass across to my co-host, Gemma Butler, who is going to be doing a bit of housekeeping for us today. So I'm going to pass over to you, Gemma.
Thank you, Rob, and hello everyone. Thanks for joining us. As Rob said, I'm Gemma and I'm the other director at 90,000 Hours. So yeah, as Rob said, I'm going to be doing a little bit of housekeeping. Firstly, to let you know, we are recording today's webinar. You probably noticed the record sign in the top left of your screen. So that means that if you want to catch up on anything, or you have to go and take a call, you can always watch the recording back afterwards. So we'll make that available to you probably, I don't know, tomorrow or Wednesday, depending on time. Secondly, we are also taking notes. So that means that you don't need to be frantically scribbling anything down. You can just sit back and relax and just join in. And then the last thing really wanted to say is that I'm going to be running the chat. So probably most of you are by now very familiar with Zoom and attending webinars. But if you just scroll and hover over at the bottom of your screen, the chat box will be there, the little chat icon. So if you click on that, that will make the box pop up. So if you just add in there any comments or questions that you want to ask as we go through. Now today, it is really an opportunity for you to benefit from all the experience that Ian and Matt have. So do use it to your advantage, and do don't hold back really. The chat is completely confidential. You will be we'll be able to see your questions, and we'll be able to see who's asked it. But when I ask the question, I won't say your name. So please do feel free to ask whatever you like. That's fine. And just finally, this is a series of 3 webinars that we're doing today. And at some point during the webinar, I'll post the link to the next session. I think Rob's going to talk a little bit about that in a while, but look out for that as well. So lastly, thanks again for attending, and enjoy. Thank you. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Gemma. Nicely done. So yes, do use the chat, guys, and any questions, just fire them in as we go through the discussion today around aligning your organization with a real focus on customer success. I've been through it a couple of times with Ian and Matt, and there's some real gold there today. So I'm hoping that you guys get some value. But do fire in any questions. And as Gemma mentioned, this is the first in a 3-part series for leaders in customer success. So for you guys, they're all free to attend. We're going to be running the next one in a couple of months' time on the 6th of October. And that's really about measurement, and with a very modern contemporary approach around customer value, what should be measured and how to measure it. And then we're going to be doing the 3rd part in December, the first week of December, which is really about how to maximize revenue and how to get the customer success engine working as a revenue engine for the business. So today is about alignment. in October, it's about measurement. And then in December, it's about revenue and maximizing that. So listen, I think that's enough from Gemma and I. So without further ado, I'm gonna pass over to Ian, and who's going to be leading the discussion today. So for those of you who don't know, Ian is a legend in customer success and is currently the director of Success Methods. So with a legendary status, without further ado, Ian, would you like to just introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm not sure about legend, but thank you, Rob. So yeah, Ian Robson. I'm currently Director of Success Methods. It's all out there on LinkedIn, so I won't take up much more of your time, but basically 20 years in customer success in one form or another, everything from individual contributor right through to Chief Customer Officer. So as Rob and Gemma have said, hopefully we're going to have to share some insights today that will be based on that experience, they're going to be useful for you guys. So thank you all for joining. And Matt, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. So much like Ian, I've also spent a number of years in customer success, 12 years across different roles and regions and responsibilities. And for the last couple of years, I've also been helping and supporting Ian with Success Methods. So look forward to doing similar on this webinar today.
Okay, are we good to go, Rob?
Yep, that's it. I think let's get into it. Thank you very much. So sit back, guys, and as we go through, do fire any questions that you have into the chat. Over to you, Ian.
Okay, thanks. So why alignment? I thought we'd start this with just a quick peek into what Matt and I have learned over the last almost 2 years now of running classroom training courses. We ask every attendee these two questions because it kind of fascinates us to see how the profession is understood and how it's developing over time. What really strikes me about this is particularly the second question. So roughly 75% of people in companies that our attendees worked at were felt not to really understand their role in customer success. And a similar percentage were felt not to really understand the role of the customer success team. So kind of interesting. There's probably a big opportunity for us all to get better aligned in our organizations, helping other parts of the company understand the role they can play in customer success. And really, we're going to focus on that in the next 40 minutes or so. So that's a quick peek into how we think the current state of play is in terms of how well companies are aligned around a focus on customer success. So let's start with a quick question. Why would we want to align our company around a focus on customer success? What do we think might be the benefits for us if we actually go ahead and do this? And we think there are probably 4 answers to that question. Your internal efficiency as an organization is probably going to be improved if you're well aligned. You're not going to be repeating yourself internally, for example, if you've got really crisp handovers, and people aren't going to be sitting in front of customers repeating themselves or asking the same set of questions, to give just one example, which is going to improve the customer experience. So we'd expect, if you're well aligned as an organization and you're all aligned around this idea of everybody contributes to customer success, that the customer experience is going to be improved. The real one for us, though, is customer value. In the end, and I think we're pretty much all customer success professionals on this call in one shape or form, in the end, we're all about delivering value for our customers. Really, that's our rationale. And ultimately, it's not just about what we do, it's about what the whole organization does. So if we can act as a catalyst to organize our entire company around this focus on customer value, we should deliver a lot more customer value. And we're really going to dig into that question a little bit later in the presentation. And obviously, if all that works out for us, if we do improve our customer experience and we are delivering more value, we should expect in turn to see an improvement in our revenues, because we ought to see improvements in renewal rates, and we ought to see improvements in expansion rates. So for us, those are 4 of the possible answers as to why you'd want to align around a focus on customer success. And to get your opinion on that, we just have a really quick little poll now. So Rob's going to quickly pop up this poll. The 4 answers we've just discussed are there, but also you might have other reasons why you think alignment is a key reason for you. Is the key reason for you. So please just select other and perhaps share that in the chat so we can understand what else is out there in terms of reasons why companies would want to align around customer success. So the votes are coming in thick and fast, which is great to see.
I always like this this section. It's like a 4-5 horse race. But looking at that, Ian, its value, as you mentioned, is 56% at the moment. So just going to leave that poll open for another few seconds, if that's okay, guys, and then I'll share the results with everyone. Gemma, just while we leave the poll open, has anyone any questions come in at this stage?
We have had, yeah, it's good. We're getting some interaction, which is great. Thank you for sending in your comments. I've got a question that's come in. Who should lead the company in a focus on customer success? Ian or Matt?
So I can pick that one up quickly and then Matt can add. So, I mean, my perspective on that is, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail, but there are two people really that need to, or two groups that need to focus there. One is clearly the executive, who need to give a mandate for customer success as a focus for an organization. But then I personally believe it is down to customer success to act as the catalyst in an organization to align everybody else around this focus on customer success. I think customer success teams are the best place to do that. And frankly, if they don't do it, there's a risk that nobody picks that baton up and runs with it, because other teams perhaps are not as focused on the customer as the customer success team. So my view would definitely be the people we've got on this call are the main catalyst for that in an organization.
Great, thanks Ian. Just an additional reason which I thought would be interesting to quickly share. Somebody's come up with build development and roadmap aligned based on customer needs instead of internal views. So that's another another reason there. If you
and that's great. I think
that's
a great, yeah, it's a great one. I think that's super. You know, if you're, and we'll talk about aligning with product later, but I think that's a great reason. That's super.
Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you for those questions. Do keep them coming in. So I've just shared the results. So there we go. Ian and Matt, hopefully that helps direct the conversation today and people's thoughts. But a clear leader there, that value is the most important reason for aligning. So Ian, I'm going to pass it back to you. But thank you, everyone, for contributing to that poll. Thanks,
Rob. And thanks for the poll, guys. And delighted to see that value is... and customer experience, the two customer focused ones are right up there. And as somebody rightly said, focus on those and you should get the revenue and you should get the improved efficiency. So what are we aligning to? At the risk of teaching my granny to suck eggs here, I just wanted to spend a minute on what we think of as customer success, our definition of what we're trying to achieve by being really well aligned. And to do that, I just want to contrast how sales think about customers and prospects with how I think customer success need to think about customers. So in sales, you expect a funnel type effect. You expect of the people you talk to in the first instance to qualify a certain percentage of those. Maybe you've got 2 qualification levels, a smaller percentage you end up negotiating with, and ultimately of 10 prospects, 1 might become a customer. And this concept of the funnel is really common in sales. I think in customer success, we don't want a funnel. We want a pipe in customer success. So what we want to do is bring everybody with us at every step of their journey. So Matt and I talk about the 5 stages, if you like, of the journey. You know, everybody's familiar with onboarding. If you get your onboarding right, then I think what that does is allow you to build a high level of presence on the application. So everybody knows they should be there. Everybody knows how to get there. Everybody's got a valid login, all the basic things you need to make sure that 100% of the potential users are actually able to be present. You want to then take 100% of those forward into really understanding how to engage with the application. So they've got to be properly trained. They've got to have proper communications around what to do and what to expect and so on and so forth. You then want 100% of the value that's available from that engagement, which might require you to put additional process or additional management around that engagement activity in order to drive value. And you want ideally to be able to talk about how that translates into an ROI, again, without losing anything along the way. So we think very much of customer success as a pipe, and you want to bring everybody with you at every step of the journey as they move closer and closer to value and ROI on their journey with you. So big contrast with sales, of course, where you expect to really kind of lose people. And to do that, we think you need to think of it as a company-wide approach. So I don't think you can do that if it's just the customer success team trying to get the job done. I think you need the entire company thinking about how to do that. And so we define customer success really as any effort that's intentionally invested by a company to ensure customers get the maximum value that's available from that investment. So quite a broad definition in a sense, but at the same time, I think customer success properly aligned across an organization does need to be quite a broad activity. It can't just be the customer success team. Often it is, but that limits their ability to be as successful as possible. So it's a philosophy for us, but it's also a function. And I think you've got to really get both of those right. I noticed a few questions coming in, and we have got a Q&A pit stop. So Gemma and Matt, do you want to pick up a couple of those questions?
Yes, thanks, Ian. We've had a really interesting question come through, which is more general, I suppose, but I think it'd be quite good to ask it now, if that's okay. The question is, I'm not seeing a lot of B2B SaaS businesses employing a chief customer officer. Do you think this will gain in popularity as it's common in the US?
I do, and I think it's kind of a really pertinent question for this webinar, because there's no question that you ideally have somebody who's tasked with aligning the organization around this focus, and that could be the leader of the customer success team. And I think if you've got the right backing from your executive, customer success leaders can do that. They can kind of step into those shoes. But it's nice to see the role formally recognized, and actually to give somebody, if you like, a scope of control that's a bit broader than just customer success. I'd include customer support in that. I would probably include professional services if they're part of the onboarding team in that. Maybe other teams. So when I was at Fuse, I also had some of the content production team under me as a chief customer officer. So certainly I think there is real benefit in having that broader perspective. Somebody sitting, at board level with the, sole responsibility, if you like, for the post-sales customer experience. So I think we'll see more. And I know we've got at least one on the call because she joined us on one of our training courses. So, we definitely have, I think, more to see from that role.
And if I can just jump in there as well, guys, from a recruitment perspective, and obviously doing a lot of recruitment in customer success, you've got to look at the market trends here. So actually, just a few years ago, you look at the Pulse conference run by Gainsight and so on, and you look at the numbers that were attended there, and then you look at the numbers that were attended this year in the thousands. I think customer success as a discipline, is really starting to form itself as a very strong career path for a lot of individuals moving from sales or account management across. And I think also the other context that I would just add is that there are a lot of technology hubs really sprouting across Europe. Paris, Berlin, are big hotspots, not just London and Manchester and so on. So I think just as businesses are now starting to put customer at the heart of their business model when they're starting up, or sort of seed funded or whatever, before they even move into series funded, it's gaining popularity, and it's so important to just stop that leaky bucket. So I think I expect it to really grow. Over the coming years, and we're always a little bit behind America in terms of recruitment trends. So if that's anything to judge it on, I think we're should be an exciting time. So I hope that helps. Okay, back to you, Ian.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about customer success maturity and how that plays into alignment. And again, this is another question that we ask in our training courses, and we typically get somewhere around about 50% of our attendees saying that they feel they're in what we would call a reactive mode of customer success. And this is how the industry started. I mean, if you think back to Salesforce, they created their customer success team in reaction to a problem, which was churn, really high levels of churn. And so it's not unsurprising that when customer success teams get spun up for the first time, they might be in a kind of reactive mode because they're reacting to some issue, some challenge. But what we think characterizes this reactive model is more reactive. You're reacting to stuff that's coming to you from the customers, to issues and problems that they bring to the table. It's often technically focused. It's about platform issues, bugs, tickets, etc., etc. And it can be characterized by not having an awful lot of proactive material, because in these cases, the CS team might be new or it might be stretched and actually lacks the time to go out and build some of that proactive material. And the challenge here, of course, is that if you're in this state, you're often viewed as tactical rather than strategic by your customer, and you've got to figure out how you get yourself up to that kind of strategic picture. What we might feel like here is we're firefighting. That's often how it's described. I think, you know, you're just putting out fires. And the challenge in terms of how that would affect alignment is that you're not really a CS function that's set up to think about and deliver value and outcomes. And as we'll talk about shortly, we really firmly believe if you're going to align a company around customer success principles, the thing that you need to align around is how you deliver value and how you deliver customer outcomes. And so if you're in a reactive mode, you simply probably won't have that focus, right? You're too technically focused and too reactive. If you're able to move into a proactive mode, which is what we'd see probably as the next step in the evolution of customer success teams, we're starting to dig in a bit more, understand what the issues are, try and get a picture across the customer base of what's causing churn, what's causing poor satisfaction. I don't know what happened there. Really thinking about, sorry, I don't know what's happening there. Really thinking about what's causing customers to be successful and using that insight to develop best practices. So understanding across the landscape so you can develop best practices to take to your customers. And again, here you'll start to measure your customers' success. You know, you'd be bringing KPIs, ideally value-based KPIs, to looking at how customers are being successful and transitioning into a proactive mode. But what we often see here is it's a feature-focused proactive mode. So here's how to use this feature, here's how to use this feature, rather than a value and outcome focused type of mode. And what we think here is you're starting to take solutions to customers, and you are beginning to get into how you drive greater value. And here, of course, therefore, opportunities are starting to come your way to align around value and measurement as all these best practices begin to surface, and you begin to understand how you can consistently drive value for your customers. What we'd finally see then is what we call the data-driven and at-scale model, where really you're using data widely to both understand success in your customers, but also to drive activity. So a big thing that always comes up in customer success is segmentation. And one of the aspects of segmentation is how you focus your attention. And one of the great things about having a lot of data is you can really see who is struggling, because the data will tell you that they're not getting value. And you can use that to focus your attention, which obviously allows you to proactively advise customers, not just in real depth and with real precision, but consistently where it's needed. And I think what we finally see here, and again, I know we have a few folk on the call who really think this way, and I suspect a lot of you do, given the answers to the first poll, you really start to become value and outcome rather than feature focused. So you're talking to the customers about business results, not about how features, etc., can be deployed in their environment. And of course, at that point, you're absolutely seen as a strategic resource for the organization. So here in this mode, this model of maturity, we think you really understand your customers, and you can really pinpoint and deliver exactly what's needed when they need it. You know, that data really gives you that insight. And of course here, because you've got data, you've got measurement, and you've scaled, ideally with some sort of tech touch program, in addition to your high touch and perhaps mid touch programs, you've got a scaled CS delivery model, then you can really build strategic relationships that enable full alignment around value. So I think it's easiest to really be well aligned as an organization when you've got a really strong grip in customer success around value and outcomes, because for me, that's the aligning principle you need to use to really get an organization properly aligned around the customer. So just another quick question, a little quick poll just to get your thoughts. It would be lovely to know and just get a sense of where you think you might be. And usually people are feeling there's some way between one or the other here. So, you know, I know it's maybe a combination of some of these, but which would most characterize you, do you think, in terms of where you are today as a customer success organization? Well, we have a battle between reactive and proactive. Proactive sneaking ahead.
I think that's it's really interesting to take a step back, isn't it, for a lot of people to just sort of reflect where we're at in terms of the maturity phase. But obviously everyone's driving towards that data-driven approach, Ian. And I guess the key thing there is really knowing what data to measure, and just as a little plug, that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about in the next webinar. But just off the top of, can I just ask you a question, Ian? What would you say are some of the key metrics that you advise should be looked at in terms of the data to make sure that you're really being in that proactive state?
Well, that differs from every company. I mean, that's quite a complex question in a way, actually, Rob. So, I mean, we think about this a lot. Spend a lot of time talking about it with our customers, because for every company, the value that they deliver directly from the platform is going to differ. From a CRM, you might get larger opportunity sizes on average because you're deploying a CRM system. From an application security platform, you might reduce the number of bugs in your code over time. So you might see that trend down over time. So at that level, it differs per platform. The challenge, and what's really interesting, is can we then translate that into an ROI where, of course, we're all talking the same language. So in the end, if we're all talking about money, cost savings, increased revenues, improved profit margins, higher customer satisfaction, those really top level things that we'd probably consider to be ROI, we're all the same. But below that, it's different for almost all organizations because it's about the capabilities to deliver value that they have, and you're going to measure those differently for each organization. What I would say is you need to get as close to those ROI type measures as you can. And in an ideal world, you are talking about ROI, but if not, you're talking about things that definitely you can translate to an ROI. So that's not logins, it's not numbers of opportunities created, it's things like size of opportunity or length it takes to close the opportunity, or numbers of opportunities, things that actually would be a business benefit to an organization.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's good answer. Thank you, Ian. And sorry, complex question, but so I'm just going to end the poll now. Thank you guys for everyone who contributed, and just going to share the results through. So there we see a lot of people believe they're in that proactive state, which is good, 52%, and then 41% of us in that reactive state. Matt, Ian, what do you think of those statistics? Does that surprise you at all?
No, I mean, I think I'm kind of expecting over time that we'll get, every time we ask this question, Rob, we'll get more and more people at data-driven and more people at proactive. So we're evolving as a profession, and we're evolving individually in every company. So it's actually great to see that proactive is the dominant one there, and we've got people who feel they're at that kind of final pinnacle of customer success also. But it's such a new profession that people are coming in, companies are coming in all the time. So I'll still expect to see reactive type models for a period yet.
That's great.
We had a great question, by the way, which I think would be worth taking about measures. So absolutely, I think the internal measures are critical. So this is a really great question about on measures. How about internal measures for customer success, net revenue, retention, churn, etc. So absolutely, and that measures ultimately how successful you're being in delivering value to your customers. And we really think about we call it the customer success equation. So value delivered for satisfied customers should equal retention, renewals, expansion, advocacy. So you can't really separate the two things in our opinion. What we think about is in customer success, focus on the left-hand side, focus on the value, focus on the outcomes, focus on the customer ROI, and trust that you will get the increased revenues on the right-hand side of the equation. If you're just trying to focus on driving revenue, you're probably not having the best conversations with your customers about how they can be successful. But great question. I think it's really important that that's the ultimate measure of why we're here. And without knowing that we're improving retention, we don't know that we're succeeding. So great question.
Ian, I'm conscious of time a little bit, but we're getting some really great questions coming through now. Thank you, everyone that's sending them in. Would you be happy just to take one more before we move on to the next section? Because I think it would be relevant.
Sure, yeah, there's another one, yep.
Okay. When talking about ROI and value, when do you think we will regularly see companies charge by realized value and executed outcomes? When or if?
I think I think that will happen. I think there probably are companies out there already who are doing that. What we're seeing a lot more of is companies charging by usage, which is interesting. So rather than charging for a seat, they charge for you actually using the platform. So we've had customers who are deep in that model. So when you actually do something on the platform, you get charged, which is great actually, because ultimately, if you're standing behind your product, selling a seat is one thing, but selling an outcome, effectively, what that is another. So I think we'll see more of that kind of outcome type or usage type. Quite a brave company that ties themselves to ROI, though. I think that might be a wee bit further off, but I mean, I'd love to know if anybody's doing that. Please let us know in comments. That would be really interesting to know if anybody is at that stage. I'm sure it will come eventually, but yeah, it's a tough one, I think.
Thank you for the questions. I'm just, like Jim has said, I'm sort of conscious of time. So it would be good, Ian, if we can go back to you on the presentation and move forward with the alignment section. That'd be great. Thank you.
I mean, hopefully everybody's enjoying these questions. So apologies if we are spending too much time on them. But so what do we align to then? So I've said this before, but we would suggest that you align your organization, if you're going to have a focus on customer success, around outcomes, value, and ROI. And we want to share, some of you may have seen this, but we want to share just a way of thinking about that, because we think it's helpful in understanding how everybody can contribute to customer value. So we have this notion of the value delta. And what we really mean by that is that when you sell your product, there's already some implicit value for the customer. They can, without any assistance from you, they can get value. A classic example of that right now is Zoom, right? We're all on Zoom, we're all on Microsoft Teams. We don't really need CSMs to tell us how to get value out of Zoom. Now, we might need a little bit of help to get the maximum value from Zoom as an organization, but we can take it and we can get a huge amount of value because it's got a simple use case, it's got a simple interface. We can get that value really easily as an organization. So there's a high implicit value. And then what we call the assisted value, or the value delta, which is the bit that we can deliver in addition if we give customers great advice and we work closely with them to help them realize that extra value. In other products, let's take the example of a complex CRM like Salesforce. That value delta is going to be a lot bigger because you need a lot more support from an organization like Salesforce to really realize all the value from a CRM versus what you can get out of the box. Typically what people take out of the box is kind of contact management on steroids and opportunity management on steroids, but they might not get into the full detail of forecasting and workflow and automation and automated approvals and things. All those things are things that you typically get assistance to generate. And why we think this is interesting is that if we break down that green part, there's a lot that goes on into there, a lot that goes on into making that assisted value high. So if you've got a consumer grade UX, for example, so if your product team have built a really great UX, for example, that's going to help the customer get value without support. If you onboard them really brilliantly so that they're perfectly set up to go from day one of go live, again, that's going to really help them kick on and get a lot of value without necessarily needing to unlock that assisted value. So we think there's a lot of thought can go into how do we build that implicit value to be as large as possible. Not to talk ourselves as customer success professionals out of a job, but to mean that we can really focus on the high value stuff that takes them from whatever the implicit value is all the way up to getting the full value from our product, which is where we as customer success professionals would then focus our attention. So as I say, we think that everybody in the company can contribute in some way to that implicit value by being really focused on how they can organize around value and outcomes. So for example, if we take sales and marketing, what can we do there? Well, if we lead in the sales cycle, if we lead in the sales cycle with outcomes, with value, and we set expectations really well, we're unlikely to acquire a bunch of bad fit customers. If we lead with a bit of smoke and mirrors just to chase the revenue, we might well acquire some bad fit customers. I've certainly had experience of that as a CS professional, and I imagine a lot of you have. And obviously that makes it very challenging then to deliver value to the customer. There's not going to be the same implicit value. So you've got to really think about how do we as customer success somehow find value for them in order to get them to be a happy customer, which makes it very, very challenging. If you're not selling poor fit and bad fit customers, you've never got that challenge. So sales can have a positive impact on customer value just by making sure they sell really well and they set expectations correctly. Engineering and development, similarly, I'm not going to go into all the examples because we'll be here till next week, but we believe that engineering and development similarly can positively impact the customer experience, negatively impact it. I mean, certainly a buggy product, a product that isn't available is going to have a significant impact on customer value because it's probably all you're going to be talking about. Support, same thing. A great support experience adds value to the customer. And not so great one, again, customer success professionals, you're spending all your time talking about tickets and the challenges that are being presented to the customer, and so on. Finance, ops, and HR. Gemma actually asked me about this when we were doing a run through. Well, how can they contribute? And I think that's very clear, right? Customer success is a tough profession. You know, we talk a lot more about mental health these days, which is fantastic. Actually creating a great culture for people to do their best work in, hiring the right people into your organization, developing your customer success team, all of those things can really have a positive impact on customer value because happy people do good work. You know, so it's kind of a simple thing, but it's a clear way that HR can really contribute to customer value if they're aligned with you around the things that need to be done. Similarly, product, we feel they can contribute. That's probably the most obvious of them all. You know, a great product built for outcomes is going to deliver far better than a product that's confusing to use or isn't really focused on outcomes. It's much more about the features we want to deliver. And professional services, we talked about onboarding and the positive impact that can have. So, you know, just in summary, there isn't a part of the company that doesn't in some way or other either directly touch the customers. And if they're thinking value, they're thinking outcomes, they're aligned with you around that being the main thing that you're there for, they can have a positive impact. And if they're not, chances are they may have a negative impact. So you might spot we've not talked about one particular part of the company, and that's the executive. And the executive role is the critical one here for me. So what we really need the executives to do is to set the tone. You know, there's no question about the fact that if customer success is going, sorry, something wrong with my, set the tone. If customer success is going to align an organization around this focus, it's really hard to do without the support of your executives. So they set the tone for the entire organization around we are going to be a customer success focused organization. And they give you the mandate. So as we've said earlier, I firmly believe customer success are the catalyst, should be the catalyst for a customer success focus, but you need a mandate from your executive. You need support from your executive. You need reinforcement if people aren't behaving themselves from your executive. So this idea of tone and mandate is really vital. And this is where customer success professionals really need a seat at the table with that chief customer officer type role, Gemma, or to have built and have a strong relationship with their executives so they can get this tone and this mandate. So everything links around measurable customer business value, in our opinion. We've talked about all the teams, and what's really interesting here, I think, and you're not going to be surprised by this, is that CSM is what links everything together. So we're pulling it all together. We're probably the people talking to all the teams about the contribution they can make. We might even be helping to align across functions as a CSM, and what we really need is that executive mandate. So we're just going to hear from you again for the last time. So Rob will pop up this poll, but what would you say currently might present the largest alignment challenge for you? Is it problems in the sales cycle? Are you not seeing good fit selling? Is your product a bit more feature rather than value focused? Do you have an incentives issue in the organization? So meaning, are people's incentives misaligned so that you're all pulling in different directions rather than all pulling in the same direction focused on the customer? Or do you have other things that might be getting in the way for you in terms of being able to really align well? And if you have, we'd love to have those in comments.
Thank you, Ian. Give you a little breather there, but I really love that slide there around the different departments of how a lot of businesses are set up, and and how each department can have a positive or a negative impact, and how customer success really gels all that together. So that made a lot of sense to me, and I know how important it is talking to a lot of businesses at leadership level. Getting the real mandate from the top down just sets the tone right across the board. So no, that's excellently delivered. So thank you guys. If you can just this is the final poll, by the way. It's not death by polls today, but hopefully, but the this is the last one. And whilst you fill this in, just for the next 30 seconds, 1 minute or so, Gemma, can we come to you for a bit of housekeeping and just ask if there's any burning questions that would be good to ask at this phase?
Yeah, I think we can take another question now. I've had some good ones coming in. So just one around measurement, actually. I don't know if Matt or Ian, you want to take this. But the question is, what's your view on measures of customer success? I know that we're tackling this in the next one, really, but just your opinion on who you think, on whether the team should be measured as a whole, the customer success team, or whether individuals should be measured.
Do you want to take that, Matt, or shall I take that one?
No, I'm happy to, Ian. So I think I think it potentially could vary, Gemma. But my take on it would be that you'd be expecting all of your customer success individuals to be delivering that value to their customers. So I think it would be relevant to have individual measures that roll up to a team. I think there could well be ways in which you'd structure a team that would have different contributors contributing to different parts of that value, where in that case potentially there's an option to measure it as a team as a whole. But I think in most organizations where individuals have a portfolio of customers, you need them to be delivering the value to each of those customers. So I think it would be more pertinent individually.
Okay.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So I'm just going to close the poll now, and I'm just going to share the results with everyone so we can have a look. So salespeople, guilty, are there. But what I would like to do though is I'm very interested. There is 28% of the audience today. You guys have said that there are other challenges. So if you'd be kind enough, if you were one of the individuals to press other, it'd be great just to hear what that might be. If you could share that with us in the chat. If not, don't worry. But if you can, that'd be fantastic. But look, whilst that happens, Ian, shall we crack on
Yes.
and move it forward?
Let's crack on. We have a great question, so we are running a little bit short of time here. So a couple of quick ways to get started, and there's nothing super smart about these. It's a couple of quick suggestions around how you can maybe get started with tackling some of these things. So if we think back to, we want to sit down with our executive, we want to have them help us set the tone and give us a mandate. So how do we build a case for our executives to get us to get them to agree to some of that? And the answer, of course, is to do some preparation and actually bring some materials to them. So, for example, put together a quick template or a quick spreadsheet with what you think are the key alignment areas or the key alignment opportunities that actually could be tackled immediately, and bring about some significant improvements in the way you treat your customers or the way that you work as an organization. So, for example, just to give you, and we've got tons of these examples, but just to give you one example, you might decide that you should introduce a monthly renewals review where finance present the current renewal picture to you. Some CSMs sometimes struggle to get that data, so we ask finance to come and present the current renewal picture. Together, you review the upcoming critical renewals to see where there might be some challenges so that finance get a good insight into where you are. You might provide some health insights to finance so they get a good picture of the organization. That's just one example of lots of areas you can probably find as a CSM leader, as a CSM individually, or as a team, where you could put together a little package and say, look at all these things we could improve if only we made some effort to do so. The other one is what we call trust points. So this is looking out to the customer, looking across the customer's journey with you. Where might we be actually losing a bit of trust, or where do we have opportunities to create more trust? So an example that I have personal experience of, when I joined a company, they were actually promoting a product council on the website and saying, we do this product council, become a customer of us and you get to attend this and influence the roadmap, etc., etc. But they weren't actually happening. So customers would come on board, they'd expect to be able to join this thing, and they couldn't because it wasn't happening. And that was quite a source of some dissatisfaction. We were losing trust essentially by presenting ourselves as one thing, but not delivering on it. And obviously the solution there was either reinstitute the product council or take it off the website, and we reinstituted the product council, which is great. That's what you would ultimately want. But the point is, we identified that as being an area where we were losing trust. And again, if you take a bit of time to look at that, you'll probably find there are a number of areas where you could quickly put in place some changes that would allow you to really improve the trust that you have with your customer, or to stop it leaking away along a journey that could be better structured for the customer. Our last little bit is just common language for alignment. So how would you think about aligning, talking rather, and communicating with the rest of your organization in a way that makes it as easy as possible for you to collaborate and align? But Gemma, do we want to take, again, I noticed there's some more questions, so do we want to take another one before we do this final bit?
Yeah, I think that would be great. We've had a couple that are on the same lines actually, which are around what's the first step? You know, so if you were going to give advice for somebody who had just started in a role as customer success with a company that didn't have this department now, where would you suggest they start? And they've got some suggestions, so it'd be good to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, that's a great question, and a very pertinent one, because as we've said already, customer success is springing up all over the place. So, we've been talking on this webinar a lot about value and outcomes as being the thing that you would want to align an organization around, because it's the most important thing for your customers. I actually think if you're brand new in a role where you're building a CS team or a CS strategy, I would start there. I would start with really properly understanding the value that we deliver to our customers in a way that I can actually measure. So how do I actually articulate to my customer in clear terms, here's the value and here's the measurements that show you what we've done, and here's what we think we should focus on next to get you more. Because everything that you do should follow from that, again, and just in my opinion, but I think if you've got that picture first, it will influence how you hire. It will influence the customer journey. It will influence how you work with the rest of the organization. It will influence how you talk to customers. It will influence your cadence with them. So to me, I would start there. I'd start with really understanding, okay, how do I really, really get my head around the value, the measurable value, the return on investment? So we had that great question earlier on about, when do we think ROI will be the thing that we sell to our customers, right? Great question. It is coming. So ultimately, it's about value, it's about ROI. So really, that's where I would start. I think great question, but that's where I would start. Yeah.
Brilliant answer, thanks, Ian. And then we have another few questions on the same lines, which are around skill sets for customer success. I'm going to ask you, Ian. I mean, I think that this is one Rob and I could kind of chip in on, but I'm going to ask you, what do you think? Where do you think people should come from? Commercial background or technical development background, in your opinion?
Well, so no one size fits all answer there, and certainly not either or. And it depends where you are in your maturity. So, if you are an early stage CS team and you're struggling with a hell of a lot of technical issues on the platform, that's not an ideal situation to be in, but you need to be able to deal with it. So you need people who can talk technical languages. Ultimately, though, for me, it's the second. I mean, in the end, you want people who can have a business conversation with your customers, particularly in the high touch segments and in the the mid touch segments. You need people who can have that value-based conversation, and that typically means they need to understand something about how businesses run, how they operate, what matters to senior stakeholders, what a good conversation is with a senior stakeholder. It certainly isn't, this widget isn't working, so it certainly generally isn't technical. But we're all software providers in the end, and you've got to have some sense of how your technology works and what it does and how it stacks together. And if a customer is suffering from a painful technical issue, ideally you can talk to that. So I think it's a mix, but I would favour the business value outcome-based skill set a little bit over the technical one, certainly.
I would just jump in there and add, if I can, from a recruitment perspective, recruiting for this discipline, I would agree. I think it does depend on the complexity of the product and the software. So often where you're more towards the something very, very complex, where professional service teams are onboarding for a big length of time, you tend to need someone that's got more technical know-how. But actually, for the most part, I would agree with Ian. I think the real skill in customer success is being able to align the what your customer wants, but merging it with with your organization's goals as well. So you need to have a handle on what the business that you're working for is trying to achieve, but equally you need to marry that with what your customer is looking for as well. And that's a very difficult skill. So someone that's got all those soft customer facing, good presentation skills, good listening skills, but equally has got that commercial acumen as well, and has an agenda, because I'm going to say it, the customer's not always right. So you need to keep a handle on your business as well. But Ian, I'm going to pass that back to you.
Okay, so we just have a tiny little bit left, just around how do you navigate internally to get collaboration. And I was really proud of this, and I was training some people yesterday, and I got another lens on this, which made me think, wow, this is fascinating. So I'll share that with you as we get to the end of this. But how do you navigate? So if I want instructions for somebody, or if you ask me for instructions how to get to my local town, I will say to you, go down to the bottom of the drive, you'll see a big tree. Turn right at the big tree and follow that until you see the school on your left. When you get to the school on your left, turn left there, go down the road a bit, you'll see the 3 Tons pub. The 3 Tons pub, turn right and follow that and you're in the town centre. So that's how I'll navigate, by kind of pictures and visual landmarks. If you ask my wife will say, go to the end of the drive, that's Smith Street. Turn right on Smith Street and follow that down until you get to Johnson Road. When you get to Johnson Road, I want you to turn left, follow that all the way down to Privet Drive, and at Privet Drive, turn right, and then you're going to be on Privet Drive until you get to so-and-so street. So she'll talk to you in kind of street names and words, basically. She's got a kind of a words type mind. And I was really pleased with this and thought this is great. And then I was training yesterday, and somebody piped up and said, oh, I do it by numbers. So I would say, go down to the end of the drive, turn right and follow that for 3 blocks. And once you pass 3 blocks, turn left, and then it's going to be another 2 blocks. And then you want to turn right and it's 4 blocks. So she thought in numbers. And I think that's fascinating, because I know for a long time, I assumed that because I thought the way that I think, everybody else thinks the same way. And then I realized one day what nonsense that was, right? People don't talk the same language. They don't think the same way. So we have to find a common language if we're going to work with other parts of our team. So what might that be? What might we think about as being the common language that we as customer success can use to be most effective in our conversations with the rest of the organization? And we're not going to go into these in a lot of detail. These are really just kind of ideas for you, and you might have your own version of this. But with sales, for example, if you're talking to them about how together you can drive increased revenue, you're likely to get their attention and have a productive conversation. Whereas with the technical support team, probably you're going to talk about something completely different, like customer satisfaction. How can we partner to both drive up customer satisfaction? With your finance team, how can you help us get more insight, and how can we give you more insight? How can you help us get more time to focus on the customer and less time to focus on admin or internal tasks and so on? And as you can see with each of these, there's a range of, for every one of the teams, there's probably something that you've got in common. With product, don't go and ask them for a feature that customer A has asked for. With product, bring some data and say, look, we've talked to 50 customers. This is what they're telling us in aggregate. These 2 things here have been requested by 30 of those customers. That's where we should spend most of our time. So product, love to talk in terms of data and the insight that provides. Point requests probably aren't going to be the kind of thing that goes over really well there. So I would just suggest that you think about, what's my common language? What's really the basis of this relationship in terms of how I can most effectively communicate with these guys? Because again, we think about customer success at the center of that picture. You're probably the guys who are going to have to make all these bits work together if you're going to align around a focus on customer success. Because ultimately, this is you, right? You are the conductor of the orchestra. And while you may not be the best violinist and you may not be the best cellist, you are the person that needs to get all these parts playing in harmony if the customer is going to get the maximum value. So really think of yourself as conducting that orchestra to align an organization around a focus on customer success. Okay, and we're at the final Q&A.
Ian, take a break. That was amazing. There's so much information there, and thank you, guys. We're actually bang on time, just about. It's a few minutes before 2 o'clock. First of all, I'm just going to say thank you to Matt and especially to Ian there for putting all the effort in, and I'm hoping that everyone got some value from that. But we're here, we're going to stick around for questions. So I know that there's been a few questions that have come in throughout. So thank you very much for that. And for everyone still with us, thank you for staying with us for the duration. And like I say, we really appreciate you being here. We hope you got some value. For those of you that need to head off, it's coming up to 2 o'clock. So please feel free to do so. But if you want to stick around and listen to the questions and answers, we've got all the time. So just up to you. If you need a question answered, if you put it into the chat, but then you need to run, we will answer it. And then, of course, this recording will be made available to you all tomorrow. I'll send an email out with some notes typed up and a copy of the recording, so you can catch up on any questions. So if you need to run, please feel free to do so. But other than that, Gemma, my partner in crime, I'm going to come to you and ask if there are what questions you have for the panelists, for Ian and Matt.
Yes, I will do. And thanks, everyone. There's lots of really great comments, really positive comments coming through. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so we'll do a few quick fire questions. Matt or Ian, can you recommend the best CSM management qualification to have? I get asked this a lot, actually.
Does that mean, what does that mean? The best qualification to be a customer success manager?
Yes.
Or the best qualification to manage customer success teams?
Oh, sorry. The best CSM management qualification is the wording. And I've had others saying, what's a good qualification you can do in customer success? So perhaps it's both.
Well, I'm going to say ours. I'm not going to be shy about that. You know, I think we very much have built our 2-day, or it's not 2 days anymore. We're in a post-COVID world. So it's a virtual classroom that stretches over 4 or 5 weeks. But I'm going to say ours because we absolutely focus everything that we do around this whole concept of value and outcomes and how you put that at the heart of your customer success strategy. So, and our attendees love it. We get incredible feedback. So we're not the best known, but I genuinely think we're the best. So I'm going to say ours. Sorry.
No, don't apologise. Okay, Matt, did you want to add anything on that one? I've got quite a few coming through, so we could just crack on with them. So CSMs are adding so much value to the customer. Are you therefore seeing, with the businesses that you work with, more CSMs taking part at the pre-sales part of the process to sell that value? Are you seeing that happening?
Yeah, I can take that in. Yeah, I think we do see that, especially in companies that are perhaps on the earlier part of their journey. People have to play multiple roles, and I think it's actually, as the question suggests, does offer a lot of value to those relationships, and probably helps with what Ian talked about in terms of selling the right potential outcomes that customer can expect. However, I think as you get a little bit larger and a little bit further down the road, what you tend to see is those CSMs focusing on what they're there to do and ensuring that they're generating that value, and you have dedicated pre-sales resources. But absolutely, and I think there's no doubt that most customer success managers have the required qualifications to do that role very, very well as well.
Great, thanks, Matt. And also more of a general question, I suppose, but what do you think, in your experience, again, of working with customer success leaders, what do you think is the biggest barrier in terms of the team that people are finding? Is there one kind of department that is more of a barrier to this than others?
Sorry, just repeat that question.
So what do you think is the biggest barrier to companies moving to a data-driven approach?
So that's a good question. I think a couple of things for me. One is often platforms just don't have the instrumentation, right? So if you built your SaaS platform thinking hard about building out features and capabilities, which is not uncommon, you may have neglected to put in place all the analytics that you need to actually understand how that platform is delivering value to your customers. So if you don't have the analytics, can be a big barrier. I think that's probably the most common one.
Ian, the only thing I'd add maybe to that is it's where you have a relationship that isn't at that level. So you're having your relationships are dealing at a much lower level, perhaps talking about cases or issues that you're getting rather than the value that you're creating. And I think that often holds people back, even if they have that data available to them.
Yeah, definitely. And I've heard people saying that it's actually quite hard, especially in these times that we're in, to reach the more senior decision makers and to demonstrate that value. So people are finding that an issue as well, I think, at the moment. Definitely. Okay.
Thank you for the questions, guys. Like I say, we're going to hang around. So if anyone has got any questions, whether it's to do with alignment and what we've been talking about today, or just customer success questions in general, please do fire them in, and we'll do our very best to get them answered for you. Gemma, I think we've had one or two more come through. Can you pick up on those for us, please?
We've got a couple on the same theme as we've already answered. So I don't know if people have joined us late, so they can watch the recording and catch up on those. We have had a question around qualities of a customer success team manager. So a leader in customer success, what are the key qualities you would you look for? Or you've looked for in the past, Ian and Matt?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's one that I'm quite passionate about. So I genuinely believe that you know, the best CSM leaders do two or three things. They create a really good structure for their team. So they basically create structures and ensure they've got the content and the material they need to be successful. But then they coach them, encourage them into delivering that in their way, without being micromanaged or, you know, overly inspected. I genuinely believe people do their best work when they're allowed to be creative and allowed to be you know, imaginative about how they do things, but that's best done within the context of some structure. So a well set up structure, a well set up framework for customer success, value and outcome focused, etc. So to me, that, you know, that would kind of sum it up for me, really. I think, you know, if you do those two things well, I think you're already halfway to being a great leader.
Great, thanks, Ian. Thank you.
That's super. That's super. And so, guys, like I say, I really hope that you've enjoyed today, and thank you for being with us. We are going to be running the next webinar in a couple of months in October. And that's going to be really on again with very much a customer valued approach to measurement and KPIs. So what should be measured and how to measure it. So do join us. I will be sending out an email tomorrow with a link if you want to register for that. But other than that, I'm not sure if we've got any more questions coming through, Gemma. Are we pretty much done for this afternoon?
I think we're okay. We're all good. Thank you.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna close it off there. So once again, thank you for being with us. I hope you got some value, and we'll hopefully see you on the next one. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Again. And thank you so much thank you to Ian and Matt as well. That was delivered really brilliantly. So thank you very much.